Hello there, dignitaries here on the dais and all the wonderful people sitting out there. I've been listening to Dr. Veera Gupta and Dr. Xavier, and I guess the focus every time has been on the leaders or the teachers and the students. Dr. Xavier gave examples of students and how they should be managed. Dr. Veera Gupta also gave us examples of the Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals. But then, you see, there are three things which are coming to my mind. And believe me, these are the three things that I have always thought are more important than others. First is that we are all learners forever. So whether you are a student or a teacher, it does not matter. Whether you are one of the leaders, as Dr. Gupta pointed out, you really need to be a learner forever. The moment you cease to be a learner, you cease to exist, you cease to develop, you cease to grow up, evolve. The second thing is embracing technology. Yes, Dr. Xavier very rightly pointed out that embracing technology is vital. I'll give you some examples later in my little talk here. But let me come to the third point. The third point is the keyword is reinventing. Believe me, the governments also today believe that reinventing everything is important. So we need to reinvent our own selves with continuous skill development. So let me start with a few examples from my own life. I remember when I was in school, in one of the breaks, I had a little pocket-sized dictionary with me, the size of a matchbox. I'm sure most of you have seen little dictionaries. So I was there in the field, everybody was eating, playing, and I was there with that little book, learning words, understanding words, falling in love with words. And suddenly there was a tap. I was surprised. I looked back. My principal, Father Tony, was there. He was a massive Sicilian. He was from Sicily. And he said, "What are you doing, Arvind?" I said, "Sir, I'm reading words. I want to learn English." I was stuttering. He said, "Okay, that's a good thing. I thought it was something fishy that you were doing." I said, "Okay." Now, can you believe it? He remembered this, and the next time we had an elocution contest and I won it, he made sure that I got a set of books, out of which one was a dictionary, one was Roger's Thesaurus. That was the first thesaurus I ever owned. And there was one dictionary of slang. So I went up to him and asked, I can understand you gifting me a dictionary and a thesaurus, but what am I going to do with slang? He said, "This is very important. This is just as important as the normal words that you use." And today, by the way, any of you who's there on the internet would understand what the Urban Dictionary is all about. There is a website which gives you a whole list of slang meanings. And believe me, when I'm writing my articles, I do tend to refer to that dictionary, the online dictionary a lot. The second incident that I'd like to talk about is, now here, you see here, what I've actually emphasized upon is that teachers and leaders of the school should proactively try to understand what a student is inclined towards and take a proactive step towards it. So this was just one small example. Imagine if there are hundreds of teachers, thousands of teachers and leaders trying to understand the students very well. Just imagine the kind of students we will end up having. Okay, the second is rather interesting. I was in the Indian Military Academy, and one of my instructors, and I have no qualms in naming him, was Captain G.D. Bakshi. Of course, he retired as a Major General, and most of you must have seen him on the TV shows, the guy with big mustaches. He was my instructor. And this guy was just as aggressive even then. So there was this class, we were gentlemen cadet, and the class was on morale. And as was his habit, he always came up, "Listen, you guys, you really must understand." This was his regular tone. And he went on and on and on about morale, and it was full of verve, enthusiasm, it was full of energy. We were totally involved in it. The commandant was an observer in that class. So after the class, for some strange reason, now this is where the funny thing starts. He looked at me, he said, he looked at the class and said, "Okay, I want somebody to define morale." "Okay, Arvind, how would you define morale?" I just got up. I was not prepared with any definition, and I said, "Sir, morale is that quality which keeps me awake in especially boring class." Stunned. I mean, he was stunned. Nothing happened, of course. Everybody went their way, but after the class, he was sitting on his bullet and he said, "Come here." I said, "Sir, you really think my class was boring?" I said, "No, sir. You asked me to define morale, and that is what I did." I was afraid. I was fearful. But he accepted. Now, this is a very important example. What I see all around is many teachers are not accepting the students and what they do and how they perceive things. So, we should realize that perception tends to change with each passing year. The student who's sitting over there, as Dr. Xavier also pointed out, he is a product of the internet generation. He thinks and does things in a vastly different way. So the teachers really need to match up to him. Now, because we are also talking about faculty development, I would also like to give you one example again from the IMA. When we were taught any subject, it was not just one class. And Kamala Das would agree with me here. I believe a lot of other people, and there are a few other people from the services here who would understand what I'm saying. It is not that there will be a class on, let's say, let me think of an example, let's say, single line formation. Okay. In the army, there is something called formations, and you march in formations. So one of them is a single line formation, there is an arrowhead formation, there are blah, 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 so many other formations. So now if we are having a class on advance, on how to advance in enemy territory, the first thing was we were all sent to the movie hall and we saw a movie. Beautiful movie made from clips from various wars where the advancing soldiers were seen, and there would be people explaining, okay, this is advance. Then there was a classroom session where all the tactical movements were theoretically taught. But here, everything ends in civil schools, but not in the military. You are off to a lecture demo then. Lecture demo is where you are in the field, on a vantage point, on some high ground, where there is an instructor lecturing you again on the same subject. And out there are real soldiers enacting everything. So you're seeing in real time whatever is happening. Is that the end? No. After this is a practice session. So we have another class where we become the soldiers and we do all the tactical movements together, platoon-wise. Now, seriously, seriously, look into yourself, look into your own hearts and say, is this really happening in our schools and colleges? Are people so involved? I guess not. I feel the level of involvement in teaching really needs to go up. We need to be aware of how things are happening in other sectors. So I gave this example just to give an example that this is actually happening. The other day, I was browsing the net and I came across a website. Can you believe it? Those guys are having free modules on hundreds of subjects. So I chose 3, registered. One of them is the basics of fiction writing. I mean, because fiction writing interests me, but there is economics, there is chemistry, all the subjects are there. And the people who are involved with the teaching part online, they are all from the top universities in the world. So from Deakin to MIT, Princeton, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, all big names over there. So this course, these little modules that I've joined, they are also from the top universities, and they're going to give me a certificate of completion as well. And those modules, as I'm progressing in fiction writing, for instance, they are not just about text being written over there and you read it passively. No, there are texts, there are videos, there are audios, there are assignments, and that's again not the end of it. They want you to interact with the other students globally from all over the world who register. Evaluate each other's work and be fearless in telling them, yeah, like, this is what I think your work should be, or this is where it's right or wrong. So that's it. And the 3 things which I said right in the beginning: we need to be a learner forever. We need to embrace technology, and we need to make sure that skill development is a continuous process. Like, okay, I'll just go back to mid-90s. In the mid-90s, I was not aware of computers at all. And that was the time when we decided, instead of buying a car, which everybody was doing, which my friends also told me, they said, you are an idiot. You have the money and you are going to buy a computer, we bought a compact Presario costing 1,25,000 then. It was just a 486 machine with a printer. And people found it funny. There was a neighbor who said, you bought a computer with a 3.2 GB hard drive. What are you going to do with 3.2 GB? You just need a few MBs. I mean, look at the things that are today. 3.2 GB is not even there in a cheap smartphone. I mean, even a cheap smartphone has more than that. So that was a time when I started learning this new skill, started being comfortable with MS Word, with word processors, with Photoshop. And as a result, 6 years later, I just happened to go for an interview. It was, there was a company looking for somebody who would head the corporate communications. And there, I was able to talk very fluently about everything about GIFs and JPEGs and artworks and collaterals. And why? Because up to then, I was in sales. This was none of my job. This was none of my business. I was, without even knowing, trying to reinvent myself. And that reinventing actually helped a few years later. I hopped from sales to corporate communications. And from corporate communications, in say about 5 or 6 years back, I decided that enough is enough and I'll do some serious creative writing. And here I am. So, you see, this reinvention is a continuous process. It is not that it ends when you are 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 or 80. No, it never ends. So that's it. We really need to understand that faculty development is all about the faculty deciding to remain a learner forever, embracing technology and reinventing all the skills that are there to be reinvented and adopted. Thank you very much.